about 15 papers, there was an overwhelming response from the postgraduates, this time for the VBR award. Thanks to the mentoring from the teachers on your side, 15 papers were received for the V. Balagopala Raju award. And after scrutiny, 3 of the best were selected for oral presentation today. And this Professor VBR award covers general pediatrics including neonatology, and each presenter will be given 10 minutes for presentation and will have 5 minutes for discussion. The questions will be only from the judges and the answers will be only from the presenter. And to judge this most coveted award of IIP Tamil Nadu, we have none other than the teacher of teachers, Professor Dr. Srinivasan, Professor Dr. P. Selvakumar, Professor and HOD of Pediatrics at Tanjore Medical College, and Professor Ramesh, former Professor and Medical Superintendent at Sri Raja Mutaya Medical College. We'll now start the presentation with the first presenter. Ten minutes. The first presenter will be Dr. Ajita Bharati, correlation of flow cytometric minimal residual disease with known conventional risk factors in pediatrics. Study on acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The first, the second, the third. Load panniya. Sorry, next panna solren. We have some hiccups with the presentation, and we'll have Dr. Ramachandran presenting on prognostic value of early neutrophil lymphocyte ratio in pediatric victims of snake bite. You have already been assessed for a score of 60 by the internal judges, and now the judges for today will assess you for the relevance of the study, the methods employed in the study, statistical analysis, conclusion of and validity, time taken for the presentation per se, the slides, discussion and answer to the questions for a total of 40. We'll start the first presentation. Over to Dr. Ramachandran.
Thank you. Pleasant morning to everyone and pleasant morning to judges. I am Dr. Ramachandran from Indira Gandhi, from Institute of Child Aid from Madurai Medical College. I am here to present my work on prognostic value of early neutrophil lymphocyte ratio in pediatric victims of snake bite. I would like to extend my gratitude and thanks to my director Balashankar sir and my chief Dr. Shivakumaran sir and my assistant professor Dr. Kannan sir, and to all my chiefs and my assistant professors and my PGs who helped to complete my study. So going on to study, I am going to present my work under these subheadings. First, introductions. We all know snake bite is an acute, life-threatening, time-limited medical emergency condition. If you miss that time, we will result in lots of complications. The only available bedside test at present for diagnosing envenomization is 20 minutes whole blood clotting time. But there is no standardization for this test according to WHO guidelines. In few cases, the whole blood clotting time may be normal or may be normal initially and deranged later, or may be normal with progressing local envenomization signs like cellulitis. And this results in the delay in administration of ASV, which results further increase in the morbidity and mortality of the victims. So this warrants a basic investigations which alone or in combination of whole blood clotting time helps us to diagnose envenomization earlier. So this paved us to conduct this study in order to save lives much more easier and effectively. So we did this study to find out whether the alteration in the leukocyte count, that is differential count of leukocytes following envenomization, has the ability to predict the diagnosis and severity of snake bite victims. So my research question is whether the WBT whole blood clotting time is accurate or not. So, based on WHO guidelines, wherever the whole blood clotting time is done, it should be done under standardizations, that is using uniform glass works and sample technique and temperatures, whether whole blood clotting time is sensitive or not. So, based on previous studies done way back, we can conclude that whole blood clotting time is low sensitive for detecting coagulopathy from one study, and one more study stated that whole blood clotting time, though it is relatively sensitive, almost 1/5 of the cases it missed where the anti-snake venom is essentially needed. So why I took neutrophil lymphocyte ratio? Based on this paper, which was published in the Journal of Venom and Animal, based on venom and animal toxins, the component in the snake venom can cause a rapid inversion in the ratio of neutrophils and lymphocytes. This was the basis for my study. So one more study which is published in 2016 by Webster and al. stated that leukocytosis was evident even before detection of significant coagulopathy and prolonged PTT following snakebite envenomizations. So with the availability of hemograms even in PHCs, we can diagnose envenomizations even before whole blood clotting time, and we can refer the child to higher centers for effective management. So coming on to methodology of my studies, my primary aim of the study is to assess the prognostic ability of neutrophil lymphocyte ratio in early prediction of envenomization, severity of clinical profile and outcome in pediatric victims of snakebite, which is done under two objectives. My primary objective is whether neutrophil lymphocyte ratio has the ability to detect systemic envenomization earlier than whole blood clotting time, and to study its association with various variables. And my secondary objective is to derive a cutoff value to detect envenomizations and the complications following snakebite. Methodologies. This was a prospective observational study which is done over a period of 1 year in Institute of Child at GH Madurai with a sample size of 102. I arrived the sample size using this formula and using the OpenEpi software. It was found to be 102, and we done this study with the help of 75 cases. So methodology, the select inclusion criteria for my study was children aged between 1 month to 12 years with the history of snakebite or with the clinical signs suggestive of snakebite envenomization, either local or systemic. And ICU admission criteria, those children with cellulitis crossing more than one joints, or those children with neurological symptoms like ptosis, respiratory failure or systemic envenomization like acute kidney injury or hematuria. Exclusion criteria, those children who are referred after receiving initial treatment with ASV from periphery centers, or those children who are admitted after 48 hours of snakebite, or those children with the history of hematological complications. So, how I did the studies? Data are collected from the subject in a structured proforma which is showed on the right corner of the study. Any symptoms pertaining to envenomization, either local or systemics, are included in the studies, and whole blood clotting time and complete hemogram was done at the time of admissions and whenever the whole blood clotting time is repeated. All patients are treated as per the national guidelines. So using this formula, I calculated absolute neutrophil count, absolute lymphocyte count and my neutrophil lymphocyte ratio. Statistical analysis are done using SPSS software 16s and ROC curve was derived. So what's my outcome? These are my primary and secondary objective which was already stated, which I am going to justify now. So out of 75 cases, 59 cases are venomous bite and 16 are dry bite. The dry bite was diagnosed based on normal whole blood clotting time and no signs of envenomizations. Out of 59, 50 are hemotoxics and 9 were neurotoxics. So these were the NLR ratio at the time of admissions. From this we can conclude that the venomous bite are higher NLR ratio which is statistically significant than the non-venomous bite. And second tabular column is based on requirement of ASVs. We can conclude from the image as well as the tabular column, it is that higher the NLR, more the ASVs are required at the time of admissions, and the NLR was progressively decreased after the ASV treatment. So out of 59 venomous bite, all 59 bites are treated with ASV, though 13 cases have normal whole blood clotting time, out of which 9 were neurotoxic bite and 4 were hemotoxic bite. Out of 9 neurotoxicity, the indication for ASV are persistent neurotoxicities after 10 vials of ASVs, and out of 4 hemotoxics, the first 3 are progressing cellulitis and 1 had progressing cellulitis with repeat whole blood clotting time as more than 20 minutes. So all 13 cases, that is out of 59, 13 cases were treated with ASV, though they have normal whole blood clotting time. From my study, I conclude that all these 13 cases have elevated neutrophil lymphocyte ratio even at the time of admission. So this is my final study where based on envenomization, the neutrophil lymphocyte ratio is significantly higher in case of venomous bite than the non-venomous bite, and based on ASV requirement, those having higher values with statistically significant required more than 10 vials, and based on ICU stay, the duration of ICU stay, those with the NLR value of 10 required more than 48 hours of ICU stays, and complications, either systemic or local complications. Those without systemic complications have NLR value of 7.67, which is statistically significant. So comparison with the previous frontrunners, we can conclude that my studies also have similar findings with the other studies, like where envenomizations and complications have been detected even at the time of admissions with a simple neutrophil lymphocyte ratio. So to compare the strength of association with the various variables which I studied, all have positive correlations with neutrophil lymphocyte ratio, with ASV requirement as strong positive correlation with the correlation coefficient ratio of 0.9187. So my second objective is to derive a cutoff to say it is insignificant. So based on software, and we derived a cutoff envenomization with NLR of 3.31 with a sensitivity of 95% and specificity of 100% can detect envenomizations earlier than whole blood clotting time. So my primary objective was satisfied, my secondary was finished, and my aim is also achieved. To conclude that NLR for envenomizations higher for venomous bite than the dry bite, NLR of 3.35 can predict envenomization with sensitivity of 95% and specificity of 100%. And requirement of ASV, NLR of 6.72 can predict need for ASV more than 10 vials with a sensitivity of 93 and specificity of 97. For ICU care, NLR of 6.72 can predict ICU care with sensitivity of 85 and specificity of 91. Based on complications, increasing trend of NLR correlates well with the severity of complications, and NLR of 6.72 can predict the complications. Response of treatment, decreasing trend of NLR on treatment with ASVs can be used, and follow-up patients can be followed with NLR. Then finally, whether it is whole blood clotting time or NLR, out of my study, 22 cases are normal whole blood clotting time for which we treated with ASV because of local complications and systemic envenomizations. So I go for whole blood clotting time with NLR can be ideal. So to conclude that NLR neutrophil lymphocyte ratio can be used to predict envenomization and prognosis following snake bite in pediatric victims, and it has better sensitivity and specificity than whole blood clotting time, and it has also proved its efficacy in predicting the course and prognosis of the children in hospital. Hence, NLR is one of the cheapest biomarkers available that would turn as a decision maker in near future. So whether NLR alone or WBCT alone or both, I go for NLR and WBCT. This is my reference studies, and thank you.
Check. Am I audible? Okay. So it's a nice study, very useful study. It's a common problem and every fatal condition where you have to decide within a very short time.
Thank you, sir.
So the conventional method most of the hospitals do is only whole blood clotting time. You are trying to introduce other studies, many studies on this.
Yes, sir. We have three or four studies where they included neutrophil lymphocyte ratio along with the platelet lymphocyte ratio, and they used them to predict severity as well as envenomization, sir. Almost all the studies have quoted that it is significant for neutrophil lymphocyte ratio for both envenomization and severity, but platelet lymphocyte ratio only for envenomization, not for severity, sir. So I took neutrophil lymphocyte ratios.
Now whole blood clotting time, you know for sure if it is prolonged, it's on apart with the clinical findings. But this PLR ratio you have done.
Yes, sir.
It is only saying there is an inflammation, that's all. It cannot be specific for snake bite alone. Can happen in whichever condition that produce DAVC can produce this. Hemophagocytic syndromes, even sepsis in children, all these things can alter this. Have you studied the time between the time of onset of the time of snake bite and the time at which you have done this test?
I included that, sir, based on time of snake bite and time of reaching the hospital, sir. Those who reach the hospital delay can have more NLR than those who reach the hospital earlier, sir. So delay in hospitalization can also cause delay in NLR ratio, sir, which I included in the study, but it is not nearly statistically significant, sir.
Have you done comparative studies which are only whole blood clotting has been done and only this has been done? Are there any studies?
No, sir.
That's very important, because can you decide how they followed up false negative cases in this? Have you seen any false negative in this?
We have 2 or 3 cases, sir, with false negativity, sir. And where NLR was low and whole blood clotting time was more than 20 minutes, those 3 cases we also treated with ASV, sir.
Have you compared that when whole blood clotting was negative and this was positive? How many cases in your study?
I quoted that, sir, with 13 cases, sir, where whole blood clotting time is negative and NLR was severe, sir. Out of 13 cases, 4 are hemotoxic and 9 are neurotoxicity, sir. And 4 neurotoxicity, all 4 have initial whole blood clotting time was less than 20 minutes only, sir.
How much is the time delays in your study? If you said you can detect a little earlier, if you can use a counter, you can do it within 3-4 minutes if you have it in your own ward or in the emergency room.
Yes, sir.
After the arrival of the patient, till this test has been done, what is the shortest time? Door to vein time sold on the door
We can
to...
get the CBC within 5 minutes, sir. So we cannot wait, don't want to wait for 20 minutes for whole blood clotting time. We can get within 5 minutes the WBC and we can
Okay, thank you.
arrive at diagnosis.
You've compared the whole blood clotting time with NLR ratio, like, why did you include those with the neurological presentation snake bite?
So, crate bite can have both local and as well as hemotoxic as well as neurotoxic manifestations, sir. So, the patient came only with the signs of neurological manifestation. We don't know whether it is completely cobra bite or completely crate. So, we included all children with the history of snake bite, sir.
Then regarding to the inclusion criteria, like you have chosen 2 days, isn't it? Like,
Sir?
those with bites.
Those with bites only.
2 days, like. As sir asked, like, have you then separated them into groups, like, where based on the time?
No, sir. Within 1 day only we included, sir. After 48 hours, I excluded them from my study, sir. Within 1 day, based on time delay, how late they presented, I included in my study, sir.
Was there any difference between those who arrived?
Those who delayed have higher NLR values, sir, than those who arrived earlier, but it is not statistically significant, sir.
Your NLR, like, you have taken on arrival, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Like, did you repeat?
Repeated, sir. Repeated NLR show reduction in NLR value from previous values, sir, for those who presented earlier and those who presented late also, sir. But based on at the time of admission NLR value, it is not significant, but based on repeating the NLR value, the decreasing trend was documented, sir, and it was significant, sir.
Like, from your study, can you say, like, from the time of bite, which will be the ideal time to that NLR will be significantly?
Based on my study, I can conclude that the earliest time where the patient presented was 30 minutes, sir, and that 30 minutes patient has also have higher NLR value, sir. And the last time those who presented was after 1.5 days, sir. Those patients also have high NLR value, sir.
Thank you. Actually, one of the questions he had asked about the arrival time after the bite, but I have taken history of recent infection prior to the accident, because that may influence the these factors. So if the child had some within the last 15, and also age is important, because lymphocyte count is more below 3 to 4 years of age. So have you taken the age of the child into account? As you think my questions are valid or not?
It's
From
valid.
your thought process.
Valid.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ramachandran. The next presenter, Dr. Ajita Bharati.
Good morning, respected judges and the colleagues who are present in the auditorium now. My study is minimal residual disease, that is MRD, in pediatric acute lymphoblastic leukemia and its association with other conventional risk factors. I take this opportunity to thank my chiefs, Dr. Lakshmi and Dr. Shanti, for giving me this opportunity. Coming to the topic, childhood ALL is the most common malignancy and first disseminated malignancy shown to be curable. The treatment of ALL includes multiple phases. The first phase is induction. The primary goal of induction phase is to have complete remission, which means less than 5% of blast in bone marrow and in blood and restoration of normal hematopoiesis at the end of induction. So even though many children attain this complete morphological remission, some among them relapse. This is, and the causes of relapses are many, but one among them is the presence of the minimal residual leukemic cells present in the bone marrow, which can be identified by the conventional morphological technique and can be identified by specialized techniques like flow cytometry or PCR. That is called minimal residual disease. MRD by flow cytometry detects at least one leukemic cell in 10,000 normal cells, and MRD is said to be positive if it is more than 0.01%. Why did we do this study? In high-income countries, the overall survival rate for ALL after treatment is 90%, but in India, it is only about 45 to 81%. Why this vast difference in survival rates? It's because of three factors: early identification of ALL, standard treatment protocols, and MRD assessment. Hence, studying about MRD assessment and its association with other conventional risk factors like age, WBC count at the time of diagnosis helps in identifying new risk factors or existing risk factors which is as strong as MRD and easily available in resource-limited settings. The primary objective of my study is to study the clinical characteristics of ALL and the frequency of MRD positivity in our population and its association with the known conventional risk factors. My study population includes the children from 1 to 12 years of age who are diagnosed with the ALL by morphology and flow cytometry and cytogenetics and were treated with standardized protocol and underwent MRD analysis at the end of induction by flow cytometry. Genetically predisposed syndrome children, previous cancer treatment, infant ALL and mature B ALL were excluded. Totally 131 children presented with features suggestive of ALL, and for them bone marrow aspirate was done and the morphology and flow cytometry was sent, and among them 110 were diagnosed with pre-BALL and 99 of them were tested for post-induction MRD and were included in the study. 11 pre-BALL could not be tested and they were excluded, and 21 children were diagnosed with T-ALL. Among them 20 were tested for post-consolidation MRD, and for one child we could not do it because he died before the consolidation phase. So total sample size is 119 children. So at the time of presentation, the age, sex and full clinical examination was conducted and recorded. Blood samples for CBC, peripheral smear and tumor lysis workup was done. The bone marrow aspiration or biopsy was done and sent for morphology and flow cytometry and cytogenetics, and a diagnosis of ALL was confirmed and classified into B-ALL and T-ALL. Hence, then these children were stratified into standard risk, intermediate risk and high risk based on these conventional risk factors such as age, gender at diagnosis, initial WBC count, immunophenotype and cytogenetics, rapidity of early treatment response to steroids and CNS status. And they were treated based on Indian Childhood Collaborative Leukemic Protocol. In BALL, after the completion of induction phase at around day 35 to 40, bone marrow aspiration was done and sent for morphological remission and also flow cytometric remission. Those who were positive for post-induction MRD were reassessed at the end of consolidation also. In T-ALL, we could not do the post-induction MRD because of cost constraints, and they were subjected to bone marrow aspiration for morphological remission and flow cytometric remission at the end of consolidation. These results of post-induction and post-consolidation MRD were evaluated with respect to the risk factors which I mentioned previously. The ethical clearance was obtained from the Institution Ethical Committee MMC, and written informed consent was obtained from parents and guardian, and confidentiality was maintained throughout the study. These data were entered and analyzed during SPSS software, and p-value of less than 0.05 was considered significant. The results include three parts. First is the clinical observation, which was peculiar. That is, the pancytopenia was the presenting sign in 28.1% of children, which is in contrast to the leukocytosis anemia thrombocytopenia combination. In CBC, for early diagnosis, any child with clinical symptoms suggestive of ALL or any unrelated scenario, lymphocyte percentage more than 80% in a child with another cell line abnormality, they should be subjected for peripheral smear for early diagnosis. Then the second part of the result is the comparison between the residual disease detected by morphology and flow cytometry. In BALI, morphology detected residual disease is only 4%, and among them only 2% had residual disease at last, and other 2% had false positive because of hematogones. Flow cytometry detected 14% of children having residual disease, hence therapy were intensified for these children, and they were subjected to post-consolidation MRD. And in post-consolidation MRD, they had residual disease in about 27.3% of children, which can't be detected by morphology. In PALL, morphology detected 15% of children having residual disease, among them false positive were 5% and true positive was 10%. Flow cytometric MRD detected 20% of children having MRD, and all the 20% had significantly higher amount of MRD than we see, that is 1%. The third part of the result is the association of MRD with other risk factors in BALI. We can see the age more than 10 years has higher association with the positive MRD at the post-consolidation phase with the p-value of 0.01, and higher risk group children had more MRD positivity of p-value of 0.001, and absolute blast count at day 8 after the steroids, the MRD positivity was higher in those who had poor response to steroids with p-value of 0.06. Then the comparison with the other studies which was conducted similar to our study, in this incidence of MRD positivity is relatively low in our study when compared to other studies. It may be because of demographics or due to the different genetic population. And our association with age and high-risk group was present in our study, likewise in other studies. And the MRD association with absolute basket count at day 8 was never studied, but it showed near significant association in our study. In Borowitz et al., he has done a marrow examination at day 8 of steroids, and he found M3 marrow had higher MRD positivity. So the discussion, the MRD at the end of induction and consolidation should be the standard of care, and MRD positivity is directly proportional to the slow early response to treatment. Even though conventional risk factors correlates well with MRD positivity, there are significant number of children with no risk factors who become MRD positive. Likewise, it's equal amount. Only in high risk group there were 7 children, in standard risk group there were 7 children, which paves way for the reduction of new risk factors and helps in fine-tuning the treatment for better outcome. The limitations are the age more than 1 year children were included, and sample size was limited, and cytogenetics for TAL and trisomies could not be done, and there is no long-term follow-up for these MRD positive cases. On concluding, pancytopenia was seen in relatively larger number of patients than we see, and in BALL for early detection of ALL, lymphocyte percentage is a sensitive marker, and a multicolor flow cytometric MRD is confirmed to be a sensitive test, and it should be a part of the treatment plan for all children for better outcome. And MRD positivity correlates well with the already known risk factors such as age and high risk group and steroid poor responders. So the MRD positive children with favorable prognostic risk factors should be studied, and they should undergo microarray for new genetic alterations and for pharmacological studies to why they were chemo-resistant. These are all my references. Thank you.
Your minimal residual disease, like you have subjected them to flow cytometry in B cell, like lineage post induction, and in T cell post consolidation.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain why?
In B cell, they will be classified into standard, intermediate and high risk at the time of admission, sir. In T cell, mostly they will be included in the high risk group. So we can't intensify the therapy after they were admitted in the high risk group. And there is cost constraints also, sir. So we, in BALL, after the induction phase, we can subject them to MRD, and if the MRD comes back positive, we can intensify the therapy from standard risk to high risk or intermediate risk to high risk. In TALL, they are already in the high risk groups. So because of the cost constraints and also for we are not going to do anything much for, so that we did post consolidation MRD in TALL children, sir.
Thing is like minimal residual disease, like also can be, like PCR can be done, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Why you could have done that in compared?
Flow cytometry, we didn't do it in Chennai, sir. This was sponsored by CAN Kids, and the samples were sent to New Delhi, sir. And PCR, the sample degradation is more, and it is very much costly, and the detection rate is higher in PCR. But flow cytometry was easily available, and it was sponsored by the CAN Kids, sir. So we did it in flow cytometry, sir.
What about peripheral smear for T-cell?
Peripheral smear?
Peripheral blood instead of bone marrow?
The MRD was sent from the bone marrow aspirates, sir. We see the morphology for those children, and also flow cytometry was sent for minimal residual disease. Usually these children have some residual disease, even though they had morphological remission, sir.
For T-cell, is there any superiority of flow cytometry by bone marrow when compared with peripheral blood?
Actually, bone marrow sample is better, sir, because after the chemotherapy, most of them have clearance of leukemic cells in the peripheral blood. Only in the bone marrow we could be able to identify those leukemic minimal residual cells, sir.
Thank you.
Do you have this flow cytometry in your institute?
No, sir.
You know the cost of that equipment?
Yes, sir.
How much?
It's around 10 to 15,000, sir.
1,000. If it is there, even primary health center will have it. So you are sending it to which place?
New Delhi, sir.
You know the difference there between regular conventional flow cytometry and multicolor flow cytometry?
So the multicolor flow cytometry detects more number of CD markers, sir, specific to that patient, because the flow cytometry is done at the point of diagnosis, and the aberrancy or the CD markers panel which was identified by the patient, identified for that particular patient, is being studied at the end of induction also. So it is easily detected, sir. The residual cells are easily detected, sir.
It looks like a hardcore pathology study rather than a clinician's research project. Why did you take up this project?
Sir?
Why did you take this project?
So the flow cytometry is not being done everywhere, sir, and it should be done because for the better treatment outcome, for these children, it is very essential, because this is the next path for the treatment, sir.
You did the bone marrow or the pathologist did it?
When I was in the posting, I did the bone marrow, sir.
How many bone marrows you did?
Maybe 15.
Rest of it?
Rest of it, I was a PG, sir, when I was doing it, so other PGs had the chance to do it,
Now,
sir.
is there a difference in the quality of the bone marrow aspirate that will decide the risk?
Yes, sir. Usually, if you take more than 5 ml of bone marrow, there is a contamination with the peripheral blood, sir. So we see to the point that it is only 5 ml, and only good technique persons are doing good.
Okay. And for assessing the MRD, on which day after starting the treatment you did this test?
So at the end of induction phase lasts for 4 weeks, sir. So at the end of induction phase, we'll do the MRD, sir.
No. You don't do it on a fixed day.
No, sir, for a fixed day for every patient.
No, I'm not asking that. Usually to assess the MRD, it has to be done on the 35th day after treatment
35th day, sir.
and 52 days after treatment.
35th.
You did it on 35th.
35th, sir. 1 or 2 days.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course, it's a very important study, we don't have any doubt about it, but is it absolutely essential? Of course, minimal residual disease is very important in the prognostic point of view and mortality rate, but thinking of the cost factors, okay, you think it's possible reality in most of the places in India? So what is your opinion after doing this study?
So thinking about the cost, I know that it is very expensive test, but for the better treatment, for the better outcome for these children, the survival rate drastically improves, sir. Because with,
Each life is important, saved is important, okay, but the quality of life and other things is also very important, okay.
and not only quality of life, sir, better survival. These children survive better than the other children, sir. Because when they have residual disease, they are prone for relapses and they will relapse mostly. Depends, there are studies which shows like if they have relapse, if they have MRD more than 1%, they will definitely relapse. Nearly 78% will relapse, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, just test, no,
Sir?
I'm just testing how you think this study is going to be valuable for this thing, so you are able to answer confidently. Thank you.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.
asked the other questions which also had crept in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ajita. The next presentation by Dr. Lalita Rajalakshmi, validation of pediatric dengue scoring, severity scoring system.
Very good morning to the judges and to everybody. Our study is the validation of the pediatric dengue severity scoring system, PDSSS. So on thinking about reducing the mortality in dengue by focusing just on the referral, we decided to develop a predictive tool, that is a pediatric dengue severity scoring system. So with the help of this tool, we'll be able to identify the right child who needs referral at the right time with the help of a right transport to the right place. So on looking into the literature, we found only a few studies that have been done which have attempted to develop a pediatric dengue severity scoring system, and most of them were from Southeast Asian countries, namely Thailand and Cambodia. There was one study developed from Thiruvananthapuram Government Medical College who have identified clinical fluid accumulation, platelet count and a hematocrit of more than 40,000 with a concurrent platelet reduction of less than 1 lakh with persistent vomiting predicts severe dengue. However, no such scoring system have been developed in Indian children. So with this, we aimed at validating the pediatric dengue severity scoring system, which we had developed in 2020 based on the predictive factors for severe dengue. We had constructed two scoring systems. One is PDSSS 11 with 11 parameters for hospitalization and PDSSS 15 with 15 parameters for PICU admission. So this study is conducted as a prospective observation study which validates both the scoring systems developed in 2020. Our study duration was between December 2020 to September 2021 and it was conducted at Mehta Multispecialty Hospitals after approval by our ethical committee. So we included all children who had been admitted during this time period with clinical features of dengue as per 2009 WHO classification and confirmed by serology. So I would like to stress upon day 0, which is constantly being used in the study. So day 0 is nothing but the onset of the critical phase, which is decided by the presence of warning signs or subsidence of fever, whichever is earlier. So day 0 is the onset of critical phase. Day -1 here denotes the 24 hours before the onset of critical phase. And day +1 here denotes 24 hours after the onset of critical phase. For example, if we consider Friday as day 0, that is the onset of critical phase, then Thursday is day -1 and Saturday is day +1. So our sample size justification was derived from Kangarachakit et al. Study from Thailand who had attempted dengue severity score, and we required a sample size of 46 per group, that is severe and non-severe group for analysis, and we had very well exceeded our sample size. All data were entered in Excel and we use SPSS software version 22 for analysis. Descriptive data are presented with percentages and mean with standard deviation. Ideal cutoff value for dengue severity scoring system is arrived using the ROC curve. And PDTRPS here is prospectively scored and they are presented with sensitivity and specificity. So I would like to recap what we have done in 2020, that is evolution of the scoring system. So this was conducted as a retrospective case record analysis in 2019, where we included 336 cases, of which 227 were non-severe and 104 were severe cases. We included 15 variables, of which 13 were by our multivariate study and 2 were with clinical concurrence of severity. The 2 variables that we had included as clinical concurrence were altered sensorium and major bleeding manifestations. Though they did not account any significant value in our multivariate analysis, we still included because of their severity association with clinical severity. So the 15 parameters are 6 clinical parameters, 7 laboratory parameters and 2 based on treatment response. So these are the parameters that we have included in the scoring system, of which 6 are clinical variables. One is obesity, presence of 3 or more warning signs, oliguria, altered sensorium, major bleeding manifestations and desaturation, and 2 treatment response parameters. One is shock that require a crystalloid of more than 20 ml per kg and a colloid bolus of more than 10 ml per kg. And the laboratory parameters are delta platelet count, that is the platelet fall from the previous value by more than 50%, delta hematocrit count, rise, that is a rise in the hematocrit by more than 20% from the previous value, transaminitis, hyperlactatemia, hyperferritemia, elevated LDH and a coagulopathy with an INR of more than 1.5. So we did multivariate polynomial logistic regression analysis to find independent predicting factors, and based on the multiples of the normal range, we assumed 3 for the strongest value and 2 for the moderate association, 1 for weak predictor and 0 for normal. So scoring system with 11 parameters were constructed, wherein we identify a cutoff value of more than 7 indicates a child needs to be hospitalized, and the scoring system with 15 parameters were constructed, wherein a cutoff value of more than 11 indicates the child should be admitted in PICU. So both the scoring systems had a sensitivity of 90% and a specificity of 90% in that analysis. So this is a scoring system with 11 parameters with obesity, warning signs, oliguria, major bleeding manifestations, desaturation, altered sensorium, treatment response with crystalloids and colloids, delta hematocrit rise, delta platelet fall and transaminitis. So herein again I reiterate, if a cutoff value of this score is more than 7, then we need to hospitalize the child, that is we should shift the child from the community to the hospital. So we included 4 more parameters. These are high-tech investigations, namely lactate, ferritin, LDH and INR of more than 1.5 to a previous scoring system. And if the score here is total and entered and is found to be more than 11, then we have to refer this child to PICU or HDU care. So after developing the scoring system, we validated them in 202 cases, of which 35% were severe dengue. So among our study population, we found shock to be the major complication with severity, with nearly 27%. Nearly 5% had fluid overload manifestations, 2% had major bleeding manifestations, and a few children, around 0.4%, had MODS and encephalopathy. On basis of the requirement of organ system supports like fluids or colloids or blood products or a KRT therapy, we found that nearly 30% required fluid and colloid supports, 25% required platelets, and 5% required inotropes, and nearly 3% required for KRT management. So on application of the PD scoring system with 11 parameters, which was evaluated in 202 children, we found a score of more than 7 had a sensitivity of 83% and a specificity of 96% in predicting severe dengue. And on developing the score for the major complications, we found that all major complications of severe dengue had a mean score of more than 7. On the scoring system of 15 parameters, all 15 parameters were done on 1 or 2 cases and hence the score was applied, and a score of more than 11 and a sensitivity of 75% and a specificity of 81% in predicting severe dengue. And on developing the mean score for the major complications, we found that all major complications of severe dengue had a mean score of more than 11. So So on comparison with other scoring systems developed, on comparison with the Cavalier et al. Study and the Fakatol et al. Study, we found that we had included more factors and we also had an ability to predict MODS with our scoring system. On comparison with the Tangaratchakit et al. Study from Thailand, who had attempted to develop the score with 14 clinical variables, we found it was a little laborious and tedious to score that score, and hence we, in comparison with our PDSSS, our PDSSS is distinctively identifiable and it's easy for calculation. On comparison with Srinivasan et al. Study, we have included parameters that help to predict the organ system support. There are a few adult studies that are also being developed based on a few laboratory parameters and clinical features. So in conclusion, the pediatric dengue severity scoring system is an effective screening tool to predict the course of dengue illness. 2 scores have been developed based on 6 clinical, 7 laboratory and 2 treatment response factors to predict severe dengue at the onset of critical phase. So the PDSSS level with 11 parameters, if the cutoff is more, if the score is more than 7, then shift the child from the community to the hospital, and this has a sensitivity of 83% and a specificity of 96% to predict severity. If the scoring system with 15 parameters has a cutoff of more than 11, then shift the child to PICU, and this has a sensitivity of 75% and a specificity of 81% to predict severe dengue. Also, in a subgroup analysis, we found that if the score is less than or equal to 4, then the child required no intervention and had a very non-severe course of illness, and they can be managed on a home basis. So, using PDSSS, admissions can be prioritized and we can refer them early, saving time. Severe course can be predicted and we can refer them to the PICU and hence reduce mortality. Non-severe dengue can be minimally intervened, saving resources. So the novelty is, though we know multiple risk factors are significantly associated with severity, this is the first time a tool has been developed in Indian children, and which help to predict severe dengue earlier, that is within the first 24 hours of onset of critical phase, planning, hence we can plan for early transport. And this can be done on all children with dengue at the onset of critical phase, and if the higher can mandates interfacility transport, that can also be planned early. So if the score is more than 7, hospitalize the child. If the score is more than 11, send them to PICU. And if the score is less than or equal to 4, then we can manage them at home. We also recommend this study can be validated in different centers in large numbers. These are my references. Thank you.
So of course, we have no doubt about the importance of this study, but I would like to know, okay, whether it's possible. Of course, as a PG project can be given, and of course, total application of mind will be there, and collection of data will be absolutely meticulous. But is it possible for the same thing to be replicated in a second level care? Is it possible? I want your opinion. That's the only question I want to ask you on this.
Yes, sir. It is definitely possible, sir. We have included majority of them as clinical parameters.
So it needs dedicated workers, dedicated team. Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
So you think it's possible to motivate this thing? So what is your opinion about it?
So we also recommend this to be done in all peripheral centers as well, sir. This has been developed specifically for peripheral centers.
But facilities are available today, some of these biochemical parameters.
Sir, the PDSSS with 11 parameters has only platelet, transaminases and hematocrit values as investigations.
There is so much of vagaries in reporting of these biochemical investigations in peripheries. That's why I asked this question.
So the rest of the investigations can that is the PDSSS with the 15 parameters that has ferritin, lactate, LDH should be done only in hospitalized children, sir. And we think those investigations can be done in hospital setup. So we have just developed 2 scores for that purpose only, sir.
Good, of course it's possible, otherwise the study wouldn't have been done. But I wanted to see how you respond to my question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent study, especially Nida Gaur under the guidance of a dengue expert. Study is very scientific, but I have just one recommendation or advice. Your slides are too crowded.
Okay, sir.
So for a 10-minute presentation, it cannot be like this, because even before you can read the slide, you are switching your talk is continuing. Because in any audience, somebody will be following the speakers, somebody will be following the slides. Only very brilliant people like Thangavelu, PRC and Dr. Srinivasan, they will be able to adjust with both. So you will have to, Dr. Mahadevan also, I forgot. So my future, because you have a scientific aptitude, in future you must take care of
Yes, sir,
it.
I'll do this.
Ideally will be some 8 sentences. You can split it into our slides.
Okay, sir. I'll
And you
do-
don't have to be fast, because the audience should understand. The last fellow on the audience should understand.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Maybe if you had given half an hour, you would have done an excellent job. Thank you.
I'll mind that, sir.
The only thing I want to know is, one is the previous, comparing is last year study with this year prospective study. Did you have 2 arms in this present study, like one arm only with the previous 11 score and the second arm with the 7th score?
No,
Two
sir.
groups of children.
No, sir, we actually evaluated, even in our setup, we were not able to do lactate, ferritin, LDH in all children, sir. So we evaluated both the scores, those scores with 11 parameters in all children, and only those children, like 1 or 2 had all the parameters done. So that we had included in other studies, so it was like, we did it for all children, sir.
You can continue the study with the 2 arms.
Sure, sir, yes, sir.
On what basis, like, you determine the onset of the critical phase?
Sir, it was decided by the disappearance of fever, sir, or effervescence, and appearance of warning signs, or the fall in platelet count, sir. So that's how we decided the onset of critical phase.
Fever may continue, isn't it? Like, it doesn't mean all dengue cases, like, the fever should...
Yes, sir, yes, sir. That's why we included both laboratory and clinical features, sir. And which was earlier, we considered as onset of critical phase.
regarding the onset of the critical phase.
Yes, sir.
And second question, like, is regarding the feasibility sir was asking. Like,
Yes, sir.
is it feasible? Like, you still consider this like scoring system is feasible in a peripheral setting, like, because it is mostly concerned with the inter-facility transfers, isn't it? Like,
Sir, I definitely think this is feasible, sir. With 11 parameters, definitely, we can try in different centers, and if there is any hiccup that is identified, we can rectify that as well, sir. So we think this can be validated in different centers, and it is feasible, sir. It may look laborious, but when we try to apply it, it just took only 2 minutes for us to put the score, sir, for any child. So I think it is feasible, sir.
why you wanted to do this study?
Sir, there has been a reduction in the mortality in dengue to less than 1% in the recent times. However, this is only because of the PICU intervention, sir. But the referral to the PICU is basically a general pediatrician work. So if we give an objective score to them, it will be easy for them to identify and early for them to refer as well, sir. So I think this is a major reason for us to go ahead with its study, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
That brings us to the end of the VBR award. We thank the judges for being so understanding, supportive and helpful at this early morning, and I now request our Honorary Secretary Dr. Rajendran sir to hand over the certificate of honors to our judges. Professor Dr. Srinivasan. Professor Dr. S. Ramesh. Professor Dr. P. Selvakumar. Thank you, sirs.
All the 3 candidates come. Cover பண்ணுங்க எல்லாரையும்.
Thank you, sirs. We now have the Professor B.R. Santanakrishnan Award for Teaching Institutions. Next slide. Professor B.R. Santanakrishnan, popularly known as Professor BRS, was a walking encyclopedia in pediatrics. He hailed from the small town of Kovilpatti and served in all the 3 tiers of Tamil Nadu Medical Service, the DPH, the DMS and the DME side. After